Hello friends, welcome to another episode of the Urban Homesteading channel. If today is the first time you're visiting our channel, we want to extend to you a very warm welcome and invite you to view any of our over 530 videos that we have arranged for your convenience in playlists, as we are confident you're going to find something both useful and entertaining to watch. If you've been here before, welcome back. If today is your birthday, we want to wish you a very happy birthday. Today we're going to talk a little bit about fundamentals of woodworking and how you can up your game and get it to the next level. So stick around and let's talk about basic woodworking things. Arguably one of the fundamental things you have to learn when you're doing woodworking or any type of project is fitting things. If you make a cabinet, you want to fit it in a space. If you want to cut a piece of wood, you have to cut it to fit a specific frame or a specific area. So you've heard us in this channel talk a lot about measuring and how we don't measure in general, right? I mean, there are some instances that you have to measure, but in general we don't measure because we feel, and it's not just us, master woodworkers all around the world do not like using measuring tapes. They like, instead of using what is very routinely called as a story stick or a storyboard, depending on what it does, or create templates to have faithful repetitions of something rather than measuring every time. Measuring every time actually can introduce more error. The axiom is measure twice, cut once, right? But what happens if you measure twice and your measurement is different the second time? Then what? You measure 4 times? You measure 8 times? How many times you measure because you realize this is not the best tool always for the job? If you have been a fan of our channel for some time, you probably have noticed that we rarely use the measuring tape. We do use it on occasion, of course, but we like to use scraps of wood that we mark or we cut the dimension that we need after we check. Let's say we need to span this difference. Let's try to make an H. Of course we could use the measuring tape, but doing so not only creates the problem that we have to read between those small lines, but also we could potentially knock it, right? Knock one of the two boards, because now they're loosely fit.
Right.
Of course, another way is to put a board between them. Here's our H. Then take this piece, if that is our measuring board or our measuring stick, cut the piece we want using this method, the exact dimension, right? And it will be exact. This is not something we have to worry about. And now we have the perfect measure. The advantage of this is also we can make many identical pieces, correct?
Yep.
Without having to measure, so it is faster, it is arguably more accurate, and will allow you to progress with your building. We have some measuring sticks. In one of our projects, when we created frames for our doors to make our doors more interesting, we created 2 different sets of measuring sticks, one from top and bottom measuring and one set for left and right, correct? So we don't have to measure that again. When we finish this project, as we're finishing the project, we're using the same measuring sticks, and that's the end.
And that allows us to apply the exact same process for the consistent look as we moved from door to door.
Yes, and also keep in mind that consistency is actually better or more important in woodworking than accuracy, right? In other words, I might want to make 13 of those H's, let's say any number of them, right? Now, is it important that my measurement is exactly 4 3/4 inches? Or is it important that all of them are this dimension? I will venture to say that it's more important that they're all the same dimension, right? If it is an 1/8 more or less, no one will know, no one will see. So consistency is better preserved using measuring sticks and measuring boards versus a measuring tape. And like every other tool, a measuring tape also can cause trouble if you don't know how to use it. Let me give you an example. We are building shutters for the front of their house, and we finished building them, but we have not finished completely finishing them. And one of the details we've put are those little knobs, wood knobs, right? Mm-hmm. Now the last two shutters we built, the piece of wood that we use to make the knobs is not enough to generate 16. We need 16 more to finish, right? Mm-hmm. And it is important that these are very similar in size.
Right.
So instead of measuring, and as you can see on something like that, this would be a very difficult measuring, you know. We're talking about half plus 1/16 and 3/4, you know. Mm-hmm. To measure that 16 times or 18 times and do it correctly will be very hard, right?
Right.
So what we're going to do instead is going to use this piece that is not enough, and we are going to make another piece the identical dimension on our table saw, right?
Right.
We're not going to use a tape measure at all for it. And then for the thickness, we're going to probably draw a line to know how thick it is. We have to be this way, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if it is visible. So we're going to make a line there, right?
Yep.
Again, zero measurement. We don't need to know the dimension of this to duplicate it exactly. And I venture to say that it will be harder if we try to get those 3 dimensions using a measuring tape versus using a story stick, right?
Right.
So our original equipment will act as our story stick in this case. You have also seen us doing that a lot when we cut things on the miter saw. We're going to cut one carefully, the dimension we want, and then we're going to use that as a measuring stick to cut any subsequent ones. Mm-hmm. And so far that has worked very, very well for us. Again, small variations in dimensions are going to be imperceptible. Like if we make 10 of these aces and one of them is an eighth narrower, you will not be able to see it. It will not make a real difference.
Mm-hmm. Unless they were right next to each other or interlocking or something where it would be potentially visible.
But when you see them next to each other, they will look identical for all practical purposes, unless you want to connect them and make a channel or something, you know, then you might be able to perceive a little bit of a change. But in general, do not complicate your projects. Don't measure unless you absolutely need to, and even then you can use story sticks and a nice pencil. I've lost my nice thin pencils. Carpenter pencils are not very good when you're doing this because they generate a very thick line, right?
Yeah, they can, yeah.
And carpenter's pencils are intended for what we're going to call rough work, when you frame a building, where an eighth of an inch is totally inconsequential, right?
Right.
You make a mark. But if you use a mechanical pencil, a 0.05 lead, you are going to get very nice and very precise marks that then you can duplicate with zero effort and have the desired results. Mm-hmm. So as you learn, and I know this is not the most fun part of woodworking or video, but it is important to develop good practices on using measuring sticks that will allow you to duplicate or quadruplicate or how many ever copies you want your project. Even for this, as you can see, we can put our measuring stick there, draw a line, and we don't need to know how big that is, right?
Right.
And sometimes we build like that. We build something, we like how it looks, or if we don't like how it looks, we modify it until we like the dimension of it, you know, and then we are set to replicate that.
And, you know, this is especially important if you're doing something that requires a lot of pieces of the same size or similar size, because it really increases your efficiency as well. Your accuracy is better because they're more consistent to each other, but then you can also make multiples really quickly.
Right, and when you combine this measuring stick with stop blocks, you set it once and then you can make as many similar dimension or exactly the same dimension actually. There will be zero variation. Imagine trying to make 16 of these and you have to measure each one of them.
Yeah.
We are going to put a stop block like we did on the first 16s, right? And we're going to cut it very fast, very efficiently, and they will all be the same. So the lesson for today, Woodworking 101, Don't measure twice, don't measure at all. Use story sticks. This is a story stick because it tells you a story, it tells you how high something is, right? And you can, this is a good dimension for a story stick, probably longer if you want to do bigger things. But you can see that if you have something that is 5-6 foot, this dimension, you can pretty much make marks to describe any situation you want. And you can use it for a long, long time. Anything you want to add, Mrs. Wizard?
No.
No?
You got it. So where did the term story stick originate?
Well, it's an old woodworking term because the board tells you a story, you know? Because you say, and this is a little too short for that, but let's say we want something this tall, right? Mm-hmm. That's the story. We set the length, right? And in the beginning, they will even use a saw, and we'll just make a saw mark here and then cut it. They will not even use a pencil mark. Mm-hmm. And it became a story stick because then you can repeat the story. You can make the same thing over and over, right? Mm-hmm. And again, when you look at master carpenters, you're going to find out they routinely use story sticks and they routinely use templates to make multiples of something. They don't measure over and over because we know that this is both tedious and error prone. And the question again begs, what happens if your two measurements are not the same? How many measurements you need to take then? And which one was the correct one? And I mean, where does it end?
Right.
It's problematic. Now for general dimensions, you say, okay, I want something to be 6 by 4 or something. That makes sense, right? You measure 6 feet, you put it on your story stick, you measure 4 feet, you put it on the story stick, and then you have your dimension to go from. But for most projects, especially for furniture or frames, 1/8 of an inch will make zero difference, practically, right? You don't need to be that precise, which was the point we made last week in the 5-cut method, that it is brilliant, but you shouldn't use it. It is the same concept, right? There is nothing inherently wrong with measuring. It just complicates things and makes them harder. And the idea is to make it easier so you can concentrate and focus on honing your skill, honing your woodworking, versus learning how to measure and making intricate mistakes, which potentially can frustrate you and lead you to problems.
It's very frustrating, and you can also waste a lot of material.
And in the beginning, when we started in our woodworking journey, we were measuring and we were trying to be very precise, and we made much more mistakes back then than we do now. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
I mean, we very rarely make a mistake now, and usually now it's a bonehead mistake. We didn't calculate something in our measuring stick. But in the beginning, we were making many mistakes, waste a lot of materials, have to start a lot of projects over, because we were trying to measure. We tried to follow the auction, measure twice, cut once. Well, friends, thank you for watching this episode, and we hope you found some value to it. And if you did, we would appreciate a thumbs up. If you didn't, the other button works as well. Share, like, subscribe. Let us know what else you would like to see in future episodes of the Urban Homesteading Channel. From Dr. Wizard, Mrs. Wizard, and the Urban Homesteading Channel, stay safe, put your mask on, wash your hands, and we are going to see you soon. Farewell, friends.